So Torry, we are live, and no viewers yet, but we did have some people saying they're ready to get the party started. They commented on there, so that's cool.
Good deal.
So I'm gonna adjust the audio here on my end. I think we're good. We'll give everybody a second or two just to get tuned in. That might have been waiting for this to start. And for those of you that are watching this coming on live, I apologize. We were trying to get some stuff figured out on this backside. I'm still learning stuff on how to use all this. But anyways, here we are with Torry Cook, MFK's Torry Cook, and a lot of guys. When I was sharing this around, Torry, people are saying, man, myth, legend, all kinds of wonderful stuff. And then they leave my name out. And
sarcasm, man.
Putting your name in there. I'm like, what the heck? But
Yeah.
but no, dude, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. And by the way, your internet connection looks amazing.
Hey, couldn't be much worse than it was last time, huh?
Yeah, we were struggling last time.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, a while back, Torry, I had somebody asking me if we would do a podcast talking about the Eastern Coyote. And
Right.
I know that we tried to talk about this a while back, but we just kind of got all over the place because we were having fun and being excited. But tonight we're going to try to we're going to try to gear it towards that Eastern Coyote a little bit.
All right.
And so you're in Arkansas. That's where you're from. You do most of your hunting in Arkansas. Is that right?
Right. Well, I hunt all over, but for the most part, right here locals where I do the bulk of it.
Awesome. So, and Steve, I'm a fan of you, buddy. Any fan of mine is a I don't know how I want to say that. I was gonna say anybody that's a fan of me, I'm a fan of you. But yeah, so it's cool that you have actually had the experience to travel around and hunt all over, because that, you'll be able to actually talk about Eastern. And I know it's going to come up. Somebody's going to say something about hunting a Western coyote's easier than the Eastern Coyote. Something like that's going to come up. But let's just take it as it comes. I guess we can say we'll get back to that. We'll circle back to that. Isn't that the saying right now? We'll circle back to that.
I've heard that before. You just
so I tell you what, man.
Whatever direction you head, that's the way we'll go.
Yeah. So first off, I'm going to say, those of you that don't know Torry, I know most of you are going to know Torry Cook, but he is the main man over there at MFK, stands for Made for Killing. Is that right, Torry?
That's right.
Okay. And did it always mean MFK, Made for Killing?
Well, yeah, there could have been a little backstory to that, but we'll go with Made for Killing.
Okay. You told me on the phone the other day.
Keep it family friendly.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. But I did want to tell you that
MFK originated from buddies, just kind of talking crap, and we had to clean that up a little bit for public use, and so Made for Killing stuck.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Now, Torry, are you able to share this from your cell phone right now? Are you able to share this live feed? You might be able to go to the Moonlight and Outdoors page on Facebook and then share the live feed just so other people can jump on. And while you're piddling with that, I'll go ahead and try to lay out the direction here.
You definitely have to walk me through, because this is I hadn't done the live feed stuff.
Yeah, well, nobody can prepare for it. It's I get nervous, man. I still get nervous. But anyways, okay. So this is what we're going to talk about today, guys. Torry Cook, Torry's background is actually making predator calls that they're going to load onto an e-collar. He also makes mouth calls. Torry, what other things are you making? That's pretty much.
I was sharing the post, so run that by me again. What am I making other than what?
So you're making you make mouth calls, you make diaphragm calls, okay, and then your main business though is probably your electronic sounds. Is that wrong?
I mean, it runs a tight race nowadays. I mean, originally the diaphragms was our deal. That was our bread and butter. That's what got us started, and it is still a huge. It's probably still uh, the biggest part, but the sound files and how quick they've caught on has, taken off really well and is pretty well caught up. So it's kind of a 50-50 split on the e-call side, sound library, and the diaphragm stuff too. So many people order one and get the other and combine those, which is a good thing.
Yeah. So I know when I first heard about MFK, it's back when I bought the little skull can that had some 3 or 4 diaphragms in there. And I sat at my desk at work and closed my door and was trying to make some sounds with them until my roof of my mouth started to bleed, it felt like. But no, that's the first time I heard of MFK. And I think that was probably about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, if I had to guess. I don't know, but no, Torry has a background in coyote vocalizations, and I'll tell you, this guy knows coyotes like nobody else is going to know a coyote. Now, I didn't know a lot of things until Torry and we talked on the phone for like 2.5 hours the other day till Torry's phone died, and then I thought he was mad at me and just hung up on me or whatever. But he actually has some coyotes that live, you'd say wild, right? They're not caged or fenced or anything like that.
Right. The only time that I
They
can, but they're free range. The only time that I put them up is during deer season and stuff like that, just to keep them from getting killed. But all of the recordings, all the interaction, all that stuff, day in and day out, they act as wild coyotes would. I just hand raised them, and I've spent when they were little, I spent probably more time with the coyotes than I did in my own house. So
yeah.
building that initial interaction and bond, so to speak, is why I can interact with them like I do now and get all the audio files as well as a lot of the unique footage that I get so many messages about. How do you get that footage? How do you get that audio at such close range without having them in, a cage, a kennel, something like that? And that's how I went about it.
Yeah, and I tell you, that's when it come, and I know that when I go out I'm going to spend a night out coyote hunting. I'll text you, Torry, and I'll just say, hey man, and I know it's, hey, what sounds are working. I'm not doing that to you, but it's fun to know
Right.
because this guy, he I was texting with him one night, and he was setting out with the coyotes in the middle of the night, just trying to get a good, a good howl, or it was breeding season, so he's trying to get some breeding sounds. So I mean, this guy, he's basically the alpha male of his coyote pack. He hangs out with them. He talks to them in coyote vocalizations best he can. He communicate. He's the coyote whisperer, and so when it comes to calling in a coyote, this is the guy that I like to talk to about understanding coyote vocalizations because he lives it. He's like I said, he's a member of the pack. So I tell you what, Torry, I know that you typically hunt with several different people, but who's kind of your main hunting buddy?
Well,
You
I
have one?
mean, I've got several. MFK crew. We don't have field staff, pro staff, anything like that. I've just got buddies that are with me. Some of them live in other states, so that limits how much we hunt together. Locally, Kerry Weaver, Dayton Farr, are a couple of guys that I hunt with on a regular basis. And then I actually get together a good bit with Jamie Terry. He comes down a good bit and hunts. Jason Gross Close. I always go out and hunt with Sterling, and then of course Greg, who was here with me the last time we talked.
Yeah,
We
Greg.
mentioned having him on the podcast. Clinton, Greg, Jimmy White in Tennessee. Man, I've got buddies all over everywhere. Colt Minton comes down, and then I've got some other guys that I would really like to hunt with that I haven't hunted with yet, but I'm sure all of that'll take place. So it's
Sure.
you know as often as I can get together with some of those people, I do. And I've hunted with a pile of people that I've just met off Facebook. I used to do the guided hunts and book the hunts and all that kind of stuff. And that's why on a lot of our YouTube episodes, you see me hunting with so many different people. And a lot of times that's just a one time deal where they've come down, hunted a couple times. Joey Worth in Illinois, he's actually one of my buddies now, but it started out him coming down to go on a guided hunt and just do a little predator hunting. And of course, now he's doing his own guy that hunts in Illinois, and I go out there and hunt with him. We do a lot of bow hunting coyotes. So it's, I mean, had a lot of opportunities with a lot of different people through coyote hunting, and then my Yankee buddy Tim Spike Davis that does all the cartoons. That was kind of an odd connection. Somebody I'm consider a good friend now that comes down and hunts with us as well. And I'm probably forgetting some people too that I've hunted with either here or went and hunted with them somewhere.
And the reason that I asked you that is because I was wanting you to rattle off some names that people are going to recognize. Um, you know, I'm just trying to build everybody the MFK story. I mean, before
Right.
we get too into this, most of these guys are following you over here, so they know who MFK is, they know who Torry Cook is. But for those that don't, I just wanted to give them a little background on who you were. But I guess we might as well just jump right into the main topic here, hunting the Eastern Coyote.
Right.
So Torry, I'm just going to ask the biggest question. You have hunted Western and you've hunted Eastern. Um, and I know this is going to come up in the comments over here, and I'm just going to beat right to it. What's the easier coyote to call in?
I've always said it's not so much Eastern versus Western, but coyote density and you know terrain features. That's what makes it harder or easier. And typically, to answer the question, Eastern coyotes are harder to hunt, not because it's an Eastern coyote, but because the Eastern coyote lives in typically denser, thicker cover. The population densities are typically lower, so that's why so many people say Eastern coyotes are harder to kill. There's less of them usually, and they're in terrain types that are just harder to hunt. And when you go out west, a lot of times, and of course you're going to have variations to that on either side, but typically when you get into the east versus west type deal, that's the factor that makes a difference. And when you go into the western states that have the high densities and the more open terrain where you can see coyotes farther and you've just got more coyotes that you're calling to, uh, I mean, it's simple math as far as that goes. When you're calling to more coyotes and you have better visibility of the coyotes you're calling, you're going to kill more coyotes and call more coyotes in. And you know, I I think if you put a western coyote in the same type of terrain, he would be just as hard to deal with as the eastern coyotes are in that thicker terrain. You just can't see them, and you're not calling the numbers.
Sure. So Torry, most of your hunting, um, you do most of your hunting in the daylight. Am I wrong?
No, I hunt pretty much 100% during the daylight. I
Mhm.
hunt some at night. A few years back, before the thermal stuff come out, I'd done more night hunting then than I do now. And I'll still go on, one maybe two night hunts a year. But for the most part, I'm all daytime.
So tell me why do you typically hunt the daylight? Just so you find it more fun, or what's up with that?
I like it better. I like the challenge of the daytime stuff. I like being able to, you know, see the detail of daylight calling. And I don't know, it's just a personal preference type deal. I I don't get excited on a night hunt. When I call a coyote in and I'm looking at him through thermal, it was fun the first couple times I've done it. And if you're wanting to run numbers and stuff like that, then that's really a really good way to do it. And that side of it's fun. But I'm a little different into where I'm not. I'm more interested in learning about the coyotes and trying different stuff. And I'm always playing with new sounds. I like to call coyotes on vocals and fight stuff. I like to target particular
Sure.
coyotes,
I like to
and doing that in
particular
the daytime is that's just my thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this comment up here now, the Eastern Coyote's been kicking my ass lately. Thanks for all your help and information, Torry. So,
Appreciate it.
speaking of getting your ass kicked by the Eastern Coyote, I might be on that wagon too, or I might not be, but I might be. I'm not gonna say either way.
Well, and that's another
But
thing. Whether you're in the east or the west, I don't care where you're at, and you anybody that tells the truth about it, I don't care how good they are. You can ask any of the guys that kill piles and piles of coyotes, regardless of where they're at, east or west. They have slow days where they get their ass kicked too. They're making 20 plus stands without calling in and killing coyotes, and then all of a sudden, maybe it's the next day, or maybe they change areas, or they just, it's always a grind sometimes to get back on those coyotes. And I think that's what separates some of the people that kill a lot of coyotes from those that get frustrated and kind of give up on it. One, they've always got a lot of ground and they can move around and find coyotes that are calling. And they know that sometimes the calling gets slow and you've got to keep making stands, or you may, if you're running prey distress sounds on set after set after set and you're not calling in coyotes, and maybe that's something you've had luck with in the past and it's hard to get away from. Those guys that kill a lot of coyotes, they know to change things up and keep making sets until they start figuring out what's clicking. Maybe it's vocals. Maybe they need to move 20 miles to a different area to get in coyotes, because a spot that was holding coyotes, last year may not be holding the same coyote numbers as it is the following year. So there's always adjustments, and bottom line is, whether you're just starting out or you've been at it for a while, there's going to be those days where you have slow days, you get your ass kicked, so to speak, and
Sure.
you keep on going. And the next day, you're the one kicking ass. So it's a lot of people, especially that they're new to it and they watch my videos, other people's videos, and they see all the coyotes hitting the ground all the time. The behind the scenes stuff on that is, there are those days where, matter of fact, that episode that's on the TV behind me, that was a grind. We had multiple sets that were blank stands. Coyotes weren't vocalizing. We were having trouble getting coyotes to call in, but we just kept on calling, and all of a sudden, you go from having a slow day to it may be the next day, but then you're killing. You make 7 sets and call up coyotes on 5 of the 7, and that's some of the things that people don't realize that goes on with some of the people that kill a lot of coyotes.
Sure. So, man, before we get too bogged down on these questions, Dustin Parker, he's one of our MLO guys here. He said, right there it is. Explain your process of going out and locating coyotes.
I figured the locating deal would come up. And one thing before I get into the process of locating, because this comes up and I think it should be addressed right off the bat, whether or not you should go out and locate coyotes. And in some of those areas, I've heard people say, locating's a waste of time. You don't need to locate. Well, if you're in an area where you've got real high coyote densities, you may be able to get by with going out and making blind sets, and you've got enough coyotes that making those blind sets are going to produce for you. But when you live or you hunt in areas where you have sporadic coyote populations, your coyote densities are not real good, then you've got to locate coyotes. And one of the easiest ways, especially if you're in thick terrain and you've got, a ground floor where you can't see tracks and stuff like that very easily, one of the best ways to find coyotes to hunt is to go out and locate. And my process for locating is whatever my area is that I have plans of hunting the next day. I go out, I've kind of got that mapped out, where I'm going to start and how I'm going to go about traveling that area and locating the coyotes. In my area in thick terrain, I'm stopping. Once I get that mapped out and how I'm going to cover my area, I'm going about a mile or so down the road, and I'm stopping, and I get out and howl. And there's a couple ways to check coyotes to see what they're responding to and how vocal they are or how aggressive they are to howling, which also plays a role a lot of times in how easy they'll be to call the next morning. But once I stop, a lot of times a lone howl, if I can get coyotes to respond to just a lone howl, then I'll get out and I'll do 2 or 3 lone howls. A lot of times it's on just the diaphragm. I'll do 2 or 3 lone howls and I'll wait. And if they respond, I'll get my Onyx map out. I drop a pin right where I think those coyotes are, as close as I think they are. And another tip on that is, however far you think those coyotes are, to look for those timber changes, edges, anything different. A lot of times that's where those coyotes will be the next day. And I always use my measuring tool on there to see if those edges hit out pretty close to how far I think those coyotes are. I'll drop a point on where I think that coyote's at. And I moved right in there to that spot the next day to hunt. I moved right in. Now, if I'm not getting a response on the lone house, is our audio still good?
Yeah, we're good. I had a quick question for you. So when you're doing all this, you're doing it, you're 24 hours is what you're thinking. You don't go out and locate, you don't send out a locate hound and then try to hunt it an hour later.
You could, if you were night hunting, you could do that. Or this time of the year, locating coyotes throughout the year, and depending on the time frame of the year, plays a role in when you can get by with locating and expect those coyotes to still be there when you go back to hunt. So I guess maybe I should break that down a little bit too. In your summer, do what? During your summer time
We're
frame,
good. We're led.
I'm losing you, I guess, a little bit.
No, it's okay. We're lagging just a tiny bit, man. But we just won't chirp in back and forth. I'll just let you say, and then we'll move on to the next. Go ahead.
Okay. Got you. So to back up just a little bit and relate it to time of the year, when you're locating coyotes and in relation to when you're going to hunt, if it's spring through summer, basically when you've got pups either in the den or you're during pup rearing season where those pups are staying in what they call a pup rearing area or something like that, they're staying in a small area. When that happens, you can locate coyotes pretty much anytime from denning season all the way through until fall of the year. And those coyotes will typically be right there real close. So you could locate them tonight and hunt them next week when the wind is right. Best for going in there getting after those coyotes. And a lot of times that's how I do my summertime hunting. I may stack groups of coyotes and have 40 or 50 groups located over the course of several nights before I go in there and hunt those coyotes a week later. And I've had coyotes that I've located in July that I may not hunt until, September by the time I work my way back around to them and they're still right there. The key to that is you're locating family groups. That doesn't work on single coyotes and lone coyotes. If you hear a lone coyote howl during that time frame and there's not the whole family group isn't chiming in and you're not hearing adults and pups, it's probably not very reliable to go back and try to hunt that lone coyote. Now, once you progress into fall and winter time frames, where your coyotes get busted up, your coyotes are moving around, they're no longer keying on denning pup rearing areas, they're traveling. Then it's better to do your locating as close to when you're planning on hunting as possible. So for me, like if I was going to get up and hunt in the morning, and I wanted the highest odds of calling coyotes because coyotes are so sporadic in my area, then I would get up a couple hours before daylight and I would go around and locate coyotes. And typically by the time it breaks daylight, those coyotes are still going to be within fairly close proximity to where they located at. And so that helps my odds for calling them up, helps me go in and set up with the wind right and all that kind of stuff. Again, if you've got high coyote populations, you can get by with locate. But I think it always helps. Jamie Terry, Dayton Farr, Kyle Krickenberger just won the elite, and just prior to them going out there, they were keeping me filled in. And I don't want to give away too much of their competition, secrets and success, but they'll tell you, they'll help people out. So it's really not a secret. But located coyotes that they knew would be aggressive when they went back to call was the key to their success. And they were hunting an area that had a decent coyote population. They could have made blind sets and killed coyotes, but because they were locating these coyotes and knew where to target aggressive vocal coyotes, they just absolutely slaughtered them, killed 40 coyotes in the east in 2 nights. Man. And locating was, a big part of that. But to finish off how to go about the locating, to tie back into that, I said I'd do the 2 or 3 lone howls. Mm-hmm. And if coyotes are vocalizing to that, then, I'll ride around. I can jump out of the truck real quick with a diaphragm, locate coyotes, hop back in, run anywhere from 3/4 to a mile down the road if I'm hunting in thick terrain. If I'm in wide open stuff, I may go 2 miles before I stop again and just cover that ground around your hunting area. Now, if I do the 2 or 3 lone howls and I'm not getting a response to that, then that's where I break the e-call out and I'll go into a group howl and see if they're responding to more aggressive stuff. And if they're still slow on responding, then I'll chime in with the diaphragm, because sometimes, and I've learned this from having my coyotes, there are days that coyotes are really, really vocal, and they'll howl as soon as you let out one howl, and they're already chiming in. There are other days where, for whatever reason, they're lazy, they're not wanting to talk, and I will have to get them to vocalize back to me. I'll have to get loud and long. And, that ties right into how loud do you play your call? How loud do you howl? Loud. Loud and long if you want to get those vocal responses and you're looking to locate that. You want those long, drawn out howls and you want volume. And that'll get coyotes to, talk back to you. And from there, it's, and if you're going out and you're covering a lot of ground and you're not getting any vocalizations, then you're probably going to be in just a dead time where coyotes are not vocalizing very well. And people will say, well, coyotes don't howl in my area. Well, I can tell you that's bullcrap. Everywhere I've ever been, I've had people tell me you can't call coyotes up with howls. They don't vocalize in the daytime in my area. And we'll go out there and hunt with them in their area and get coyotes to howl. But a lot of times, this time of the year, your summertime time frame, is when you're going to have your the bulk of your daytime vocals. You'll hear some coyotes howling this time of the year during breeding season, and random other times throughout the year. But that summer time frames when you've got your daytime vocals for the most part, and locating coyotes can put you right in there on top of them, and you can kill coyotes in just a few minutes. Another tip on locating coyotes and killing coyotes. I listened to a podcast not too long ago, had a couple guys on there, and they were saying when they hear coyotes vocalize back, if they locate them, they can't hardly call them up and kill them. And I kind of laughed at it because they said if the coyotes howl, you're not going to kill them. It was pretty much the message. And when you have coyotes howl back, coyotes are real territorial, and you never know where the boundary is. It could be a creek, it could be a road, a fence line, anything in between you and them that hangs them up, and they're just not hardly going to cross it. When that happens and you're working vocal coyotes and you hear coyotes, they may be 400 yards away, they may only be 150 yards away. But if there's a barrier, if there's anything, and it could be invisible to you or me, but if it's a territorial deal and they're not going to cross it, then distance becomes just as important as whatever sound you're using, whatever howl you're using. And so when you have coyotes that hang up and you hear them howl, and then a little bit later they howl and they're still pretty much in the same spot, well, they're willing to sit out there and talk trash to you or sit out there and listen to you. And as long as you're that distance from them, no matter how far or short that is, it may not be what sound do I play next or what vocal, or do I go into a fight. It may be as simple as I need to get up and close just a little bit of distance. And a lot of times especially when you're dealing with aggressive vocal coyotes, territorial coyotes, that move is more important than any sound you play to them. That little bit of pressure, that's what I call it. I call it pressure. When you put a little pressure on those coyotes, the next howl that you let out that they just talk trash to you before, previously, they run in your lap. And, to kill vocal coyotes, or to kill coyotes that their location, whether they're vocal or not, and they're hung up not coming, a lot of times getting a little bit closer to them is how you go about killing those coyotes, more so than it is picking out the right sound or, something like that. I'm not saying sounds are not important, because they are, but moving closer is a huge factor in killing coyotes, and even more so when you're dealing with coyotes in the daytime that are holding cover, that don't want to break cover and stuff like that.
That's great.
Long-winded, but I was trying to cover it all.
I can appreciate that. So, as all that was going on, Torry, I mean, just so you know, we've been up like 94 live viewers here at one time. I think we're down to 86. So you got quite the crowd here, but some other questions are coming up, and I keep seeing the same one. You can see this one up here from Joseph Worth right now.
That's an
You want
inside joke. That's a knock on my southern accent and dim trails. So
to? Okay,
Joey,
gotcha.
I mentioned earlier, Joey comes down and hunts with me, and we were going to a located group of coyotes, and I said something about them being down that dim trail. And when I said that, Joey, being from Illinois, he didn't know what the dim trail was. So I had to.
Well,
We weren't
I
with.
was
We
lost
weren't
too.
with
That's why
Southern.
was going to have I was going to have you read that question because I didn't know what in the world we were talking about. But Steve, Steve up top here, he wants to know what's your favorite couple of months to hunt?
What's my favorite couple? What?
Months? What time of year?
I like this time of the year when I've got time to find breeding pairs and call those aggressive. I've had a few hunts here in the past 2 or 3 days that were really good hunts. So I like that. I like anytime I'm calling vocal coyotes or coyotes with vocals. So breeding time frame with howls and fight sounds. I really like that time frame. And then I also like the late summer when it's vocal action and a lot of coyotes and you know fast action. Uh, I really like that too. And again, it's similar to the breeding time frame where everything is vocals and pup fights, vocals and pup fights. I don't like the or coyote fights. I don't like. I say I don't like. I like the I like calling coyotes in on anything, prey distress and stuff like that. But those times of the year when vocals are hot and heavy, that's what gets me going.
I could see that being a happy time of year for you because, like I said, you're the alpha male. You kind of know what's going on with your pack. That I mean, we're gonna have a whole we're gonna bring you back on here, Torry, and we're just gonna talk about that sometime because that's pretty awesome. So
That's
right
what I
now,
really like
let's
about
talk. Yeah, well, we're going to get there. I promise. Because right now there's folks that are having trouble getting coyotes called in during this breeding season. I know that if there's anything that we can talk about that's going to help them with that, because I read today that any coyotes that are left are going to have a PhD by this time of year. And actually, Moonlighting Outdoors, we're hosting a little virtual coyote tournament that's going to be held this weekend. If any of you are interested in that, I'll have you get a hold of Dustin Parker, by the way, and I'll put some of his information up here in a little bit, so you can get in there if you're interested. It's a benefit hunt, but Dustin will tell you all about it. But so give us some tips, man. Give us some this
yeah,
time of year breeding tips.
yeah, we got to cover that because a couple people asked me questions based on the picture that I just put up today of the hunt. So I guess we need to cover that breeding sequence that I was using the last few days. And I've told people before I didn't go into all the detail in my post because it was already long as it was. But typically this time of the year, I'm starting stands with prey distress because I think there might be a cat around. And so I'll run some prey distress stuff. And I'm also kind of testing the water and seeing if coyotes are biting on prey distress. So just here, and this was about, I guess, 5 or 6 stands that I made back to back to back. And a lot of that was on located coyotes. I got a buddy named Clayton Ashcraft that had went out and located some coyotes the night before. And then the one that I posted the picture of today with me and my wife, I'd heard those answer my coyotes from the house. And it's ground that I have beat to death over the years. I mean, I've just hammered it. So it's a really good spot to test out new sounds. So I get her, we go in there and set up, and I start going through. I probably play 12 to 15 minutes worth of prey distress. I knew those coyotes were there, but I also killed bobcats in there. So I wanted to run those sounds, and I had a yellowhammer sound that I just recorded that day. I wanted to see if I could call something up on it. So to try to shorten the story up, I run through a good bit of prey distress, and I swapped between 2 or 3 birds and a couple of rabbits. Nothing. No cats, no coyotes have shown up, and I know those coyotes are right there. So that's when I go into the breeding type sounds. And when I say breeding, I'm usually talking about coyote vocalizations, meaning lone howls on through. So I started out when you were talking to me and you mentioned I was recording some female imitation howls at night. Well, those are the sounds I started with. I had one called Sexy Little Bee, and I'd have to go back and watch the video to remember exactly which sounds I used in what order. But I think I played Smack Laid Back Howls to start off, answered that with Sexy Little Bee. And Sexy Little Bee is a true female imitation. I've got a coat that's named Little Bee. She was in heat and she howled for hours. And a point to make on breeding sounds is when people are you hear people talk about all the time about using female imitation. In my opinion, in order for it to be a female imitation, that has to be a series of multiple howls. Otherwise, it's just two or three lone howls from a cow. Doesn't matter if it's a male or a female. Uh, so when a female couch doing a true female imitation, by definition, it's probably going to be a series of several howls, maybe a gap of a minute or two, then a series of howls again, gap or two, and she'll just howl and howl and howl and howl. And so when I was recording those sounds, that's what she was doing. And so if you want to do a female imitation howl, you need to turn it into an invite. Otherwise, you're just doing lone howls. So that was what I was trying to mimic with that scenario. So I went Sexy Little Bee, and then I probably waited a minute to 4 minutes, which is what she was doing when I was recording her. And then I followed that with just another series of her howls that I called Little Bee Ready Howls. And then I've got another female that was in heat. I had a series of howls from her called Bougie Stutter Howls, which is a real unique set of howls. This cow has a stutter to her howls. She'll start to howl, and it's real unique. So I was stringing those howls together just like they were doing that night, and that was basically 6 or 7 lone howls, female howls, with a gap of a minute to 4 minutes, then another set of 6 or 7 howls, a gap of a couple of minutes, another set of 6 or 7 howls. And I did that. I probably did, like I said, I'd have to watch the video back to remember for sure, but I probably did 5 or 6 series of that to turn it into what you could call a true female invitation. And during the process, these coyotes, a pair of coyotes, vocalize back, and they're right on the other side of a thicket from where we're set up. And we're set up in a thicket, but they're in an even thicker part of the thicket, probably 200 yards away from us. And they'd been listening to that probably distress. They'd been listening to that. So I followed that with female breeding growl chirps, and I only played maybe 10, 15 seconds of that. And what female breeding growl chirps is just a submissive female that's she's being harassed by a male and she's kind of growling and aggravated, agitated at him, and there's some submissive whining and chirping, as it's referred to in there, with some growls where she's growling at him. So I play about 10 or 15 seconds of that and then go right into girl fight. And girl fight is it's those hot females in heat. When you get a female in heat, she is one more nasty girl because she doesn't want anything else around her. They get real aggressive, and I'm not sure they wouldn't kill each other in the fights if left alone long enough. But that's what that is. Girl fight is a pretty aggressive fight between two hot females, and I went from that female breeding growl chirp straight into girl fight, and I let it run through one sequence. And when it hit a gap, I paused it. And no sooner than I hit the pause, I could see their legs coming through the thicket. And they popped out probably 20 yards from us. And my wife shot the lead coyote, which was a big male that's about as old as they get in the wild. Coyote was probably 10 or 12 years old. And I called him up on ground that I've just hammered over the years. So it was pretty good. But that gave me a glimpse of, okay, maybe coyote vocals and breeding type stuff, coyote fights is what I need to be using. So fast forward, I go hunt with Clayton. He's got these 5 groups of coyotes located. This is the next morning. We start making sets. Same exact scenario. I'll keep this a lot shorter. I'm using that same breeding sequence, and I'm starting those stands with prey distress. I'm running those birds and I'm running those rabbits for, 10, 12 minutes just to see. I'm wanting to see if I can call up a cat. I'm also wanting to see if the coyotes are biting on it. Never called a coyote in on the prey distress sounds. As soon as I'd kick over into that breeding stuff, they would either show up on the house or we'd get our eyes on them on the house and we'd finish them off with girl fight. And we called up coyotes on all but 2 of the sets and showing that the prey distress sounds are still a good thing to show to throw in there. On one of the sets, right after I left Clayton's, I went ahead and kept on hunting. And the very next set that I made, I was running that yellowhammer sound. It's actually called broke pecker, but I was running it and called in a cat and killed the cat. So that's kind of how I go about running my stands this time of the year. I'm going to throw those prey distress sounds in there to see what stuff's triggering on. And if I'm getting bites from coyotes on prey distress, then I'll stick with that, or maybe even run it longer, or mix in more rabbits or more birds if that's what the coyotes are coming to, rather than coming to the vocal stuff.
That's good stuff. So, and that was a heck of a story the other day. And didn't you end up killing? I mean, are you going to go into the whole point where where you killed with the bow?
Well, the bow was a little bit before that. Right after I recorded those female imitation howls and the girl fight sound, same thing. I had heard coyotes from my house while I was recording those. I told you about them. They were actually moving in. The wild coyotes were actually moving in closer. It was a pair of them. They moved in. I think they howled 3 different times, about 15 minutes or so apart, and it closed a good bit of ground on the female little B that was doing the howling that I was recording. There was a pair of wild coyotes closing ground on her while she was doing that. Of course, I'm keeping all this stuff in mind, paying attention to it. Next morning, get up, want to try these sounds out. I go out and pretty much that same type sequence with these same sounds, call in a pair, and I shoot the lead coyote with my bow, and at 15 yards coming to those sounds.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. It'd be pretty sweet to be able to record your own daggone sounds and then go out and kill a coyote with them.
I love it. But as fun as it is for me to kill with it, when other people kill with the sounds and I get feedback on that, that's tops. That's when you've really got something, when people start killing with them in other areas.
Yeah, for sure. So, Torry, I'm going to try to catch up on some of these questions here real quick. I'm going to scroll back up because I don't want to leave anybody kind of hanging. One thing I did see pop up a minute ago, though, is how long do you want us to run our fight song or fight sounds?
Usually I'm running the fights towards the end of the stands. And if it's a situation where I know I've got coyotes listening, I'm sporadic with it. I'll play, like I said a while ago, I played that girl fight through basically what would be one loop of the sound. So probably, 30 seconds or so, and it'll hit a gap and I'll pause it. And I may pause it for 10, 15 seconds, and then I go right back into it. Now, when I get coyotes, like some of those that me and Clay called in, or Clayton, when we called those in, we had some coyotes come in, kind of get downwind of us. I kicked on Pound Town, which is a killer fight. And those coyotes had winded us. They knew we were there, and I just let it play. I'm blasting them with it. High volume, blasting them with it, and call those coyotes back in 3 different times to that. So it's kind of either or. I mean, I'm sporadic with it when I think I'm calling coyotes that are just sitting out there listening. If I'm getting ready to leave and I'm not I'm not sure I've got something around, I'll kick it on, let it roll for a couple minutes, and if nothing shows up, I'm gone.
Time to beat feet. So while we're talking about, you keep referencing high volume. And then this is something that always comes up with me and my buddies when we're out calling. And I don't know if Derek's still on here, but Derek's one of the main guys that I hunt with, and he was in here. He made some comments and stuff earlier, but Derek, I think that Derek thinks that I tend to call a little bit loud, especially during the coyote vocalizations, and it's hard for me not to. So tell me, let's just talk about that for a minute.
When I'm running prey distress sounds, a lot of times I will run those a little bit lower volume, starting out, and then I'll bump it up. Or actually, a lot of times when I run prey distress, I've actually got the volume cranked decent, and then I'll run it down pretty quick and call it at a lower volume. But on the coyote vocals and the way I approach coyote vocals, coyotes don't make quite sounds unless it's like social interaction sounds and stuff like that. When a coyote howls, he's howling full volume. He's howling loud. When coyotes get in a fight, it's aggressive, loud, rough, mean, so I'm calling it a volume. When I'm listening to the call and I'm playing a coyote fight, then I'm trying to play that coyote fight at least as loud as what the coyotes would be at that distance. And I'm pretty familiar with that because I hear it all the time. But I mean, it's not, you're not scaring coyotes with coyote fights if they're aggressive coyotes anyway. I mean, it should be loud and aggressive. That's the whole point of playing some of those sounds. And when coyotes howl, they're howling full volume. They're never whispering when they howl. So that's my approach with vocals. Now, if I'm running stuff like the breeding sounds and the social interaction sounds that are more subtle and quiet, then I'm playing them more along the lines of what I think the coyote would sound like. But I think people get too hung up on the volume either way. I mean, one thing for sure, you want to reach their ears, so you definitely got to use enough volume to get out there to them. And so, you know, I
No,
take that approach with my calling.
no, that's fair. That's fair. So I run a shockwave currently. That's what I'm using. And I don't want to say what my buddy uses, but I run a shockwave. And I run mine. Sometimes I'll run it up to 38 and let my howls out, and it sounds awful loud. But just tell me this: what do you want to do when it comes to your fight sounds and your volume? You still run it all the way up?
The fights.
Yeah, the fights.
Yeah, that's what I was saying a while ago. When coyotes
Okay.
fight, they're fighting aggressive and full volume. So I'm running my volume at least whatever I think coyotes would sound like at that range, or compared to dogs. You've heard dogs fighting
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff like that. So, I'm never running those sounds quieter than what I think a coyote would sound like at that same distance. And again, I don't think it's that critical. Um, as far as the different calls go, and I don't, you're not going to bother me if you mention what other people are using. I like to be wide open, honest, and truthful about when I'm talking about this stuff, even if somebody's not using whatever I'm using. So you say whatever, and
Sure.
yeah, I'm fine with that. But I will say this on these X series calls, like the X24 that I run, the X Wave, the X2S, those X series calls. Those are the first calls that I've ever owned that I've never ran my house at full volume. When I had a CS24, the Shockwave like you've got, when I did a howl on them, I was howling at full volume. I was howling on 40. And with these X series calls, volume 30 is about the equivalent of 40 on the Shockwave, the CS24. So people that are familiar with Fox Pro, that's going to give you a comparison. The X series calls have more volume than I use. I'm still howling loud, and I said volume 30 is about the equivalent of maxed out on a CS24 or a Shockwave. When I run howls on my X24, depending on which howl it is, I'm anywhere from 28 to 34 is about as loud as I ever go. And the bulk of my sounds, prey distress or coyote vocalizations, are going to be run somewhere between about 16 or 18 on the low side up to that 32, 34 on the high side. That's kind of the volume range that I'm usually in 90% of the time. Now, I will start some stands where I'm right up in a thicket and I think there might be a cat or something right there. I'll start a stand a lot of times with something like woods rat or a bird or something that's not a high volume call anyway. But I'm still cranking that on up there. I'm not playing that rat quiet. I want something to hear him, but it's more of a subtle sound. And I'll kill some cats and coyotes. I'll pick one up, but if I pick him up, it's going to be quick in the stand. I'm running that a couple minutes, And if he's not right there on top of that call, then I'm swapping into another louder rabbit, louder bird until I get into my vocal stuff. And outside of this time of the year, I don't mess. I play very little prey distress sounds outside of winter calling. Not because it won't work at other times, but I just like vocals better. And from that spring through summer time frame into fall, well, when you get into pup dispersal in your fall time frame, that kicks off your prey distress stuff. I did a video talking about when pups shed their baby teeth and they get their canines in. That coincides with kind of the family bust up or when coyotes start spending time, as individuals. And they don't always disperse either. Sometimes it's the second year before the pups disperse, but they are spending time, as individuals and time alone. And that's when your prey distress stuff really kicks in. But so basically, fall, winter, I'll mix some distress, and outside of that, I'm howls, pup distress, pup fights, and I run a lot of social interaction stuff, or what I call social interaction stuff. And most libraries don't even recognize those sounds.
So here's something for you, and we have a ton of questions over here, and I'm definitely gonna try to get a lot of them answered. But I know that you text me today. We were texting back and forth a little bit, and you told somebody that you were going to go through your current sequence that you're using now. So
Right.
you want to share it with, there's 68 of us on here listening, so don't let us down.
Well, that's that sequence that I talked about a while ago. I mean, I'll gladly cover it again if you think somebody's on that didn't hear it a while
Yeah,
ago. But
yeah,
my
yeah. Go
sequence
for it.
right now is starting. I'm going to start a stand, even if I know coyotes are there. If I think there might be a cat around, or I think the coyotes might be biting on prey distress sounds, I'll start my stand with prey distress, and I'm usually going to pick two or three different ones. Like I said, I might start out with a subtle prey distress like woods rat or flycatcher, a bird or a rodent, something along those lines, and run that for a couple minutes. And then I'm going to move into a little bit more aggressive prey sound, a louder bird like that yellowhammer that I mentioned, deadwood woody, goody woody, some of that type stuff, cotton bomb, some of your louder uh, prey sounds. And I'll usually play two or three different prey distress sounds for, a couple, 2 or 3 minutes. Typically when coyotes are out there listening, if they're going to show up on something, they're going to show up on it pretty fast. So I'm normally not running sounds for real long periods of time. Now, what I will do is put gaps in there. And if you talk to Greg Gallagher, he calls a lot like this too, with the gaps in his between sounds. So I may run a sound for 2 minutes and then sit there for 2 or 3, 4 minutes, depending on how much ground I'm trying to cover in the day. Usually, when I'm calling local, I'm pretty slow. I'm not trying to make a whole lot of sets, and so I'm slower with my sets. And I'll put some silent time in there. And a lot of times, I kill during those silent time frames. But I'm running those prey distress sounds, two or three different ones. You can bunch that all together, or you can put the gaps in there. Both ways will work. And then once I get through those two, three, four, however many prey distress sounds you want to run through, then I go into that vocal sequence that I was talking about. And that's going to be, I'm going to start that with some lone howls and wait a couple minutes behind the series of lone howls, probably go and answer right back in with some more lone howls. Then a lot of times I answer that with a group howl. You heard me last time talk about holler back group howl. I play that behind a lot of the lone howls, or if you don't want to go into a true group howl, the pair howls, which, coyotes are paired up right now. I'll play a pair howl and I'll wait a couple minutes behind that. And that's when I go into the breeding sounds. And I like that female breeding growl chirp. I like bump and grind, hooked pair, you know, one or two of those sounds mixed in there. And then I'm going to follow that up with some of the more aggressive fights like girl fight, pound town, table scraps, and so that's kind of my sequence. The exact sequence that I've been running lately is I've been starting with a woodpecker, going into a rabbit, going back to another bird, and then I'm usually going right into Boone Wine Lone House, Smack Laid Back House, one of those males, and then I'll go right into some of those female howls, Rue, Little B, Bougie, one of them. I'll go into them and then right into those breeding sounds.
So tell me, Torry, that sound bump and grind. I love it. Tell me about when you recorded that sound. What was going on?
Bump and grind is that sound is actually one of our older sounds, and it's it's kind of a breeding slash food fight, I guess you would call it, because the the coyotes are paired up, but they're also arguing and growling around over food. So you could kind of classify it either way, and it's just a breeding slash food fight. And I think a lot of times those some of your food fight type sounds mix in with your breeding fights. I think girl fight is a true, what you could classify as a true breeding fight. Hooked pair is a true breeding fight. But all of those chirps, whimpers, fights, all that kind of stuff that coyotes do, you hear it more often during the breeding season, but they do it year round. And there's so many sounds labeled as female whimpers, female whines, female chirps, estrus chirps. And those sounds, I think we've talked about it before, those female sounds are not just female sounds. All the coyotes make it. And there's two peaks when they do it, and you'll hear the males do it just about as much as you hear the females do it. But when they've got pups, you'll hear them call to those pups with those same type chirps and whimpers. You'll hear them call to each other when they get separated. The males will do it to call to the females, when they get separated, and then the females do it a lot too, especially during breeding season. I think they get labeled as breeding sounds because you see peaks of those sounds during breeding season. But so
Yeah,
it's a good time to use them. But they do it year round. All coyotes do it, and so you could take sounds that are labeled from any library that says female estrus chirps, and you could play female estrus chirps during the spring or summer of the year and call coyotes in on it. It's just a
I
lot of
see.
people don't know that, and there's a lot of marketing with female sounds that don't necessarily hold true.
Sure. I see Colt Minton just commented on here. He said he's killed a damn pile of coyotes on bump and grind year round. So that's, I don't know what it is about the sound, but I always go to that before I even hit that pound town. So, I like it an awful lot.
It's a good one to mix in there for sure. It's been a killer.
So let's catch up again. Got some stuff piling up on us here. How do you know when to get away from your breeding sequences? Answer that.
I had a guy message me that earlier today. As long as your coyotes are paired up, they don't have to be right in breeding in estrus. Um, and the coyote stuff's kind of like dogs. Old timers would say a week coming in, a week dog, and a week going out. So that month of February is always going to be good, but you can back that up into January a little bit. Basically, from the time the coyotes pair up pretty good until they get pups is is a good time to run your vocals and breeding sounds. They're going to react to it. They're going to be aggressive. A breeding pair is going to react to those sounds, you know, during March when they're getting ready and preparing dens the same way that they will right now. Now, once those pups are in the ground, then that's when I'm gonna swap over to, my more pup distress stuff, and I'm still gonna run vocals ahead of that. I'll run vocals, pup distress, but I get heavy on the pup distress stuff then, and as that progresses, I'll really start mixing in those social. Once those pups get out of the hole, I'll start mixing in the social interaction stuff behind the house, and before I ever get into the pup distress sounds. And then once those pups get out of the ground, they're going to be 3 weeks and older, they'll start getting out of the ground. And as soon as they get to that age, 3, 4 weeks old, they start doing some vicious fighting for pecking order. A lot of people wouldn't think it, but those little pups, that's probably when you get your most aggressive, vicious fights, and they will be bloody fights. But that's when the pup fights and all that kind of stuff, I'll start using them more. Of course, they work year round too. You can call up Coyotes on pup distress and pup fights right now, even though there are no pups. Uh, but I really go to that stuff heavy once those pups are in the ground, and then most especially once they get out of the ground and that pecking order is established.
Sure. No, I even sometimes I still throw out pup distress even in the breeding season. I killed a coyote a week or two ago on
Yeah.
pup and distress. I just if nothing's coming in, you got to try pup and distress. That's kind of
Right.
like just how well do you think a coyote can see at night? I mainly hunt at night.
On those dark nights, anybody that you ask that hunts a lot at night, and like I said, I don't do a ton of night hunting, but I have done enough of it to know that you can stand right out in the middle of the field and coyotes run right up to you. So you can get by with a lot of stuff on a dark night. I think the dark night is the key to that.
Awesome. I feel the same way. I don't like to be backlit. If I'm backlit by a street lamp or anything, I feel uncomfortable.
Right.
Travis, this is my buddy Travis. He wants to know how far can the typical call travel. And you know what, Torry? It was last winter, and I had an idea to hunt this particular field a particular way. And I told my buddy, I said, "You go on to the other side, which is probably 500 yards away." And there was some snow on the ground, and he was running his lucky duck. I'll just say it.
Yeah.
And I was 500 yards away, and 20 minutes later, um, he flashed a light at me that we were done, and I never even heard the sound. I never even heard it.
Really.
It's the same guy that tells me I run my volume too high.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the answer to that question, 100%. Of course,
Yeah,
how thick your terrain is, humidity in the air, there's going to be a lot of factors as to how far it'll travel. But I think all of us that have done much calling have, I think the coyotes can hear your vocalizations and stuff like that farther than you can hear them answer back. And I know we've probably all turned on a prey distress sound and it not even be real loud volume. And as soon as you kick that sound on, you hear somebody's house dog, yard dog go to barking, and they're a mile away or farther. You can barely hear them, so they can pick it up a really long ways. But a coyote hearing a sound and responding to a sound's two completely different things, because
sure.
distance plays a huge role in whether or not coyotes come to you. It's just like the example of the coyote that my wife and I just killed. You know, they're within 200 yards of us. I think that entire set, they were right when they howled back at us, they were in the same location that I had heard them howl at, the night before. So they were close and they listened to everything that had been played and didn't respond to it until we got into those breeding and fight sounds. So distance plays a key, and what sounds, if you're triggering them on those sounds.
I'm trying to. Oh, here it is. I'm going to show this one. Um, this Troy Morgan, he's asking right here, where should we look for them? Open fields or the woods? So my question is, when I'm out here, we're doing a lot of calling right now, and we're using digital night vision, like the 4Ks and the Wraith and things like that. If we go into the woods, it's definitely gonna. Unfortunately, we don't have thermal. We have thermal scanners, but not scopes. So when
Right.
we're trying to hunt in the woods at night, makes it awful tough. So give us your input on that.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure I'm clear on what he's asking. Looking for what? A setup at night or
He's saying, when should we look for them? Where should we look for them? In the woods or open fields? I'm pretty sure that he's saying, should he be out hunting in the timber or hunting across the field?
I mean, it depends on the area you live and what the coyotes do in that area. If you're in areas where coyotes, you've got a lot of open ground, fields, stuff like that, and the coyotes are comfortable coming out in them, and you can call them into the open fields, especially at night. At night, you're typically going to be hunting in the fields. So if it's a night related question, then I'd definitely be setting up in the fields because they're going to be comfortable coming out in that most of the time anyway. If it's
Sure.
daytime hunting in my area, I rarely set up in fields or open areas because we don't have very much of it, and the coyotes are, they're timid about breaking cover. They're hesitant to break cover. But there are other areas that I hunt that have a lot of broken ground, pastures, small fingers of timber, and you can get by with calling them in fields. So that's a that's a either or depending on where you're at and how your coyotes react to cover, or more importantly, how they react to breaking cover. If you've got coyotes that are living and staying all day long in the woods, then you need to be hunting them in the woods. And the way to set up, the way that I go about setting up on that, is I move into the block that I think they're in with the wind blowing. And of course, I'm usually hunting with a shotgun or a bow. And I'll set up and I'm kind of setting a trap for the coyote. I love to hunt like this. I'll set up inside the tree line just far enough that I can shoot out to the edge of the field. And I'm setting up with the wind that's blowing into the field. And you'll give that coyote a false sense of security to where he can come skirt the edge of the field just inside the tree line. And he still thinks he can get to the downwind side of that call between the edge of the field and wherever you're calling from or wherever you've got your call set up at, and you can shoot him. You can be setting within shotgun range or however far you can see or whatever between that edge and where you're at, and you can take advantage of two tendencies that a coyote has. One is to hold cover, one is to get downwind of the source of the sound. So I like to set up to where that coyote thinks he can use the cover and the wind to his advantage. And sometimes you don't have that option to set up like that, but when you do, it can be killer. And I prefer that over setting in the field and trying to make him break cover, with the wind in my favor.
That's solid. So, and that's something I'd like to start doing more of, is trying to make my way up into the timber just a little bit, because, but again, I feel restricted by using digital night vision with the infrared light. But
Right.
here's a question that I think is a good one. What do you think?
Is it the one I'm looking at on the screen there?
Yeah, the regards to night hunting.
More active or vocal depending on mood phase. I've seen that both ways, and there's a ton of debate on it. Typically at night, people don't like they don't like a bright full moon, but and probably more often than not, they don't seem to be as vocal on full moon nights when we're riding around locating. But I have had full moon nights. It's just like the whole deer hunting full moon with the deer debate. I've seen that go both ways, where you can have really good days or nights regardless of the moon phase or the weather conditions and all that kind of stuff. I think weather plays a bigger role than the moon, outside of them seeing you and stuff like that when you're night hunting. But as far as them being active and vocal, there's not enough. I haven't seen, nor do I know anybody that can predict it well enough to say that it's reliable one way or the other. So,
Yeah,
I go either way.
I'm with you. And
When people
Justin,
figure out, sorry,
no, go
that's
ahead.
why you got me. I was going to say, when people figure out how to predict animal movement, whether it be coyotes, deer, or whatever, based on moon phase and weather conditions and all that kind of stuff, they'll have something. This is what I go by on coyote hunting and deer hunting. When I have weather conditions that are extreme in any direction, meaning extreme for the area you hunt. So if I've got winds that are extreme for the area I hunt, I don't like it. It seems to suppress movement. If I've got rain or any kind of weather that's extreme for what it usually is, then it typically suppresses movement. Just like this recent snow stuff that a lot of people had that I had here. The first 2 days of that snow, my coyotes, and typically when I've tried to hunt the first day of a big snowstorm, everything's shut down. Nothing's moving. Now you give it 2 days into that, after that snow's been on the ground a day, 2 days, it seems like the movement and everything really picks up, probably because they are hungry and needing to be active. But anything out of the ordinary, same thing with temperatures. If you get extremely low, I hear a lot of people say, if you get extremely cold temperatures or anything like that, it typically triggers movement. I think it triggers movement 2 days into that. But when it first happens, I think it's anytime you have an extreme change in any direction with weather, temps, all of that kind of stuff, I think it is typically suppresses movement. And that's about as reliable as a predictor as there is as far as trying to predict any of that stuff. Moon phase and all that other stuff is
Yeah.
too unreliable to even pay any attention to.
I've got guys that swear on barometric pressure for coyote hunting. There's the jury cast and different things that shows the spikes, and they live by it, and they won't hunt outside of it.
Right. I think it probably, I think their barometric pressure, moon phase, and all that kind of stuff, I think it may have some effect. To what degree, nobody has been able to accurately predict, including the juries or anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
They've got all these moon calendars and stuff that catch a lot of hype. And this is what I'll tell you, and this is a fact. Watch when people hunt deer or cows in the daytime. They're going to be hunting early and they're going to be hunting late most of the time, regardless of any of that. And if they thought they could get out there, their game and fish chart or their moon dial or any of that other bull crap, I think, then why would they go out there and sit? Why go out there and sit till 10 o'clock and then leave when the predicted movement is at noon? And how many people do you know that live by that to the degree that they actually follow it? Most people are still going to sit out there at the times that those animals are naturally active, and day in and day out, coyotes and deer, as far as daytime movement goes, just day in and day out, coyotes and deer are active early and late. They just are. They're naturally programmed that way, and that's about the only thing that's reliable. I'm not saying you can't kill one in the middle of the day because it happens every year, but it's unreliable as far as predicting it based off moon or anything like that.
Well, that's it's definitely interesting to hear your side on that. Torry, so somebody has asked here what is your favorite sounds you've recorded? Can I answer that for you?
Sure.
I think because I kind of maybe not your favorite sounds that you've recorded, but I know that you do really like Submissive Beggar and that Boone Lone Wine House.
I do.
Is that your
Submissive
favorite?
Beggar killed more coyotes for me. And when I recorded Submissive Beggar, I wasn't particularly excited about that sound. It actually took a little while to figure that sound out because I didn't play it or run it that much. Um, and I've had other sounds that I thought, man, this was going to be a money sound, and it calls and kills coyotes, but for whatever reason, it doesn't trigger like some of the other ones. Um, I really like. I'm proud of Pound Town. That sound has been a killer. Uh, man, I don't know. There's so many of them, and the anytime I record sounds from my coyotes, the Yo Mama sound is unique. I like the title of it. It's fun to hunt with, so it's one of my favorites. We had a heck of a trip with Yo Mama, and that's another reason. Just talking about it, it's fun to use that sound. But we had a heck of a trip running that sound in Texas, and I think it's going to kill a whole lot of coyotes to come. It's fairly new, a new release sound. Um, I mean, these female howls that I just recorded are some of the best female howls that I've, and I don't care that they're female howls, they're just some of the best howls that I've recorded, to date. Uh, Happy Yappy Group. I really like that's an adult and pup, family group howl. Really like that one. I mean, man, there's so many of them. Den Vicious too. Really good sounds. Uh, that I Any of those that produce and work really good that I recorded from my coyotes, I like them.
You're damn proud of all of them. Yep.
It's the relationship I have with and they are not pets. I don't fall in love with animals. I'm not that guy. I'm not in love with my coyotes, and I don't consider them my kids or anything like that. But I'm fascinated by them. I love learning about them, and so I have a kind of a relationship with them from an interest point of view that makes me really proud of the stuff that I've learned from them and the sounds, and then being able to kill coyotes using those sounds.
So, Ethan Boone, I'm just going to read this out. Coyotes don't seem to be as vocal in my area this year. There's a ton of calling pressure, more so now than there has ever been. In years past, it seems as if the vocal coyotes would commit to the call well. So far this year, more than half of our coyotes have came in silent. Do you think hunting pressure could be that bad? So,
I mean, pressure definitely affects animals. Human pressure affects animals more than anything else, whether it's deer, coyotes, whatever. When you start getting pressure from calling, just intrusion, people fooling around, it makes everything harder. Uh, as far as that contributing to how vocal they are, maybe, maybe not, especially if you've got people howling at them all the time. And I've always said that vocals are the last thing coyotes educate to, but coyotes educate quick to a lot of things. And so if if you're getting pressure of any kind, regardless of the animal, and most especially coyotes, it's definitely going to have a negative effect on them. So I would say that if you're getting that much pressure in your area, it's definitely hurting your call up rate and just your hunting of coyotes in general. You can take
sure.
areas that hold really good coyote densities, and those coyotes can be really hard to call up, especially after that ground gets hammered for several years. I've Me and Scott Hampton have had this conversation numerous times because we've got some similar stuff where we've hunted the same ground for multiple years, and just looking back in the past on what that ground produced early on, and how quick the coyotes came in, what they responded to, and now you can hunt that same ground with sounds that worked then that no longer work, and you're not killing the amount of coyotes, even though the coyote population is probably still just as strong on that ground. And there's only basically two factors: the pressure that you and other people put on those coyotes from calling them, and it may just be pressure from you on certain ground, but the pressure you put on them, and then their ability to educate. And I used to not buy into the whole educated coyote deal until I started fooling with coyotes, and everything that they encounter. I think we've talked about this before. Everything that they encounter is either a positive or a negative for them experience, and they don't forget it. If something scares them, if something spooks them, or if something, the first time that a pup reacts to catching a bird and hearing, it only takes one time, and then they key in on that in either a positive or a negative way. So uh, it's, and I'm not saying that, as soon as you mess up and you miss a cow and you call him up with a certain sound, he can't be killed. I'm not going that far with it, but the more pressure you put on coyotes and the longer coyotes are hunted on certain ground, the harder they become to kill. And it does seem like vocal response and just calling rates go down in general.
Yeah, that's something that we might bring up for another time too, is just talking about trying to hunt the pressured coyote. And I'm not going to put you on the spot with that today, but keep that in the back of your mind. Watching the comments over here, you got some people wanting to know why they can't use MFK on their Lucky Duck, and will we ever be able to use MFK on our Icotech?
You know, I don't know. I'm a guy that when I say that I'm going to do something and I give my word, then I stick with that as long as the other side does the same. And that's why I parted ways with one of the main reasons that I parted ways with Icotech earlier. And I don't hold anything back either. I'll answer stuff straight up, and if people get pissed off about it, they can get pissed off about it. But as far as uh, as far as the deal that I've got with Fox Pro and why they can't use sounds on Lucky Duck is because I did an exclusive deal with Fox Pro. That deal's been really good. It's been a great deal. Um, I do wish some of the Fox Pro guys that run MFK Sounds promoted a little bit better. I've had a couple of issues, not with Fox Pro directly, but with some Fox Pro guys that I've hooked up with sounds, and I know they use my sounds and they don't mention them, which is fine, no big deal. But um, it did burn me a little bit, and I look for the opportunities to repay the favor. I'm kind of like that too, but the reason that they can't use them on the Lucky Ducks because I did an exclusive deal with Fox Pro and I stick to that. And as long as Fox Pro, as long as we've got a good relationship and we have, I think we're going on 4 years into that, then then I'll stick to my end of the deal and they'll be exclusive to Fox Pro. I've never ran a Lucky Duck. I have nothing bad to say about Lucky Duck. About their calls or anything else. We had the conversation about Rick and his sounds before, and I'm straight up on that too. I think Rick is doing the same thing with Lucky Duck that I am with Fox Pro. I think he's got a good library. I think he's straight up with people. I think he's passionate about his coyotes and his sounds. I think he's doing the same. I think he's trying to do the best with his stuff, and I'm trying to do the best with my stuff. And at some point, down the road, I hope people remember and mention me in the conversation of, well, that guy was putting out some of the best sounds there were. I want to be one of the best, and I think a lot of times people forget. Uh, you got Johnny Stewart. A lot of times his name gets left out of stuff, but there are those people that do things for the coyote calling world that I have a lot of respect for, whether we're working together directly or not. And as far as the future goes, who knows? I mean, I never, what I'm doing right now, I never saw a lot of that coming. And there may be one day to where not only are you putting MFK sounds on every call out there, you may be putting Rick sounds on every call out there too, and you can get, MFK and Rick sounds on the same unit. Uh, who knows? Who knows what all that holds? I think he's going to do the same thing I do, and as long as he's got a good deal and he give his word, he's going to be where he's at, and I'm going to be where I'm at. And I wish him the best. And I feel like that he would probably, if you ask him the same questions, I feel like he would probably tell you something similar to what I said. And you and I have had the conversation, and there's a reason that I don't mention some of the other libraries that are available for some of the calls. And when and I won't get into that too much, but I'll say this: when MFK and I believe Rick does the same thing. Of course, Fox Pro's had a solid library forever. I'm kind of, but they have their own deal with Fox Pro, so they're not even up for debate on where their sounds are going to be ever. They're all Fox Pro sounds are going to be Fox Pro sounds. But as far as all these libraries that are available for calls, and some of them I know absolutely nothing about. But if you buy a sound from me or you buy a sound for Rick, I believe that the title of that sound and the description of that sound is exactly as it's marketed and exactly as advertised. And I know for a fact, and I'm telling the truth, there are libraries out there that hack sounds from YouTube. They're bullcrap sounds with bullcrap titles and bullcrap descriptions, and I have zero respect for the people doing that, because people like myself and Rick put a lot of time, effort, and passion into recording legit sounds that are as advertised. So, and boy, I just pissed some people off, but I told you the truth. And those people that are going to get aggravated about it, it's because they know I told the truth. And it is what it is. They can make money that way if they want to, but
Well, you heard it here first, guys, right here on the Moonlight and Outdoors podcast. So yeah, so
hey, I told you, you asked me about certain stuff. I ain't gonna hold back.
I didn't ask that; they did.
Well,
So,
it got brought up, so there
yeah,
you go.
might as well throw it out there. And we'll just show it for the heck of it. But so moving on from that, Torry.
You don't want to stay on that subject.
I don't know, man. I lost my whole train of thought, to be honest. But
You're
you
like,
know,
last podcast with that guy.
yeah, I honestly think it'd be cool to bring on Rick Pallet and you at the same time and just listen. And I'll just lay low in the bottom corner and just listen to you guys talk about how these sound, not how they're made, but just listen to you guys conversate about coyote vocalizations and what they mean, and even just playing the sound in the background or something and just learning the language, because that would be so powerful. For I mean, we're still up at 73 live viewers right now. That would be powerful for all of us to know and listen to. I don't
And
know.
that's getting on that subject just a little bit. So many people want to know, what's this howl mean? What's this coyote saying? What's all this stuff mean that coyotes are doing and saying? And the market has put so many descriptions and definitions on certain howls, with interrogation howls and all that kind of stuff. And because of the market, sometimes, I know what those definitions are referring to. But as far as knowing what coyotes are saying, a lot of times when they're howling, I don't know. I think at best you get to the point to where you kind of know that coyote's attitude when he's making a certain sound. Because if you take, and I'm talking about Rick and us having a discussion, I would like to get, I would, that'd be enjoyable for me. And I feel like he's probably going to say the same thing I would, because he's fooled with enough coyotes that you can take 5 or 6 different coyotes, or however many coyotes you want to take, and those coyotes have unique voices. Coyotes recognize each other's vocalizations, and they also don't vocalize the same way. So if you have a coyote doing a lone howl, one coyote that does a lone howl, his version of a lone howl may be completely different than another male coyote of the same age or female coyote doing a lone howl. They'll all be lone howls, but they'll all sound different, because those coyotes have a different way of doing it. And if you record that coyote over and over, you can record him today, you can record him 3 days from now, and when he does that type of howl, his version of a lone howl, then he pretty much follows that, a very similar pattern. They're recognizable, and that's just how they do a lone howl. And if you go back to some of the things that have been written about coyotes in magazines and some of the old forums and stuff like that, those different howls from coyotes that are reacting and howling for the same reason and doing the same type howl, some of these write-ups and stuff would label those howls differently and think they mean different things when they really don't. It's just I think you can almost break it down to whether or not a cow is, being aggressive with his vocalizations or not. And if you've got you'll kind of have your lonely type howls, and you'll have your excited stuff, and you'll have your aggressive stuff. And outside of that, the only thing that I mentioned female invitation stuff earlier on, and the way to go about truly doing a female invitation, where I think it's got to be, for it to be a true female invitation, it's got to be a series of howling over and over and over and over and over again, like that female typically does when she's doing what's referred to as a female invitation. I think that may hold some weight if you're howling over and over and over again. But
Right.
if most of the time when you look in a sound library and you see a sound that says female invitation howl, and you play that series of howls and you shut it off after two or three howls, then even though the title said female invitation howl, you didn't really do a female invitation howl like a wild coyote would do, a wild female coyote would do a female invitation howl. You just threw out two or three lone howls, and you would have accomplished the same thing had you threw out two or three howls that were called interrogation howls, or two or three howls that were called, that were male howls. And then that goes back to what I said about some of the libraries. You've got a lot of libraries that have recorded coyotes from distance. They have no idea whether the coyote's a male or a female. Yet the sound title will describe it as a male or a female. You've got people that knowingly record male or female coyotes and purposely label it as female coyotes because they know that's a better marketing strategy and will sell more, because people think they need to use a young female howl a lot of times. And the truth is, those sounds will work, but they're actually using a male coyote howl and don't know any better. And it worked the same way had it really been a female howl. So they get by with it. But
Yeah.
that's the truth of how it actually goes. And anybody that tells you that they know exactly what a coyote's saying when he makes a noise ain't been around enough coyotes.
That that comes up a bunch, and I'm never gonna try to tell my buddies that you can't tell the difference between a male and a female, but I'll have them listen back to Torry Cook tell them,
You know,
because they're always saying, "Oh, there's a big male coyote back there. You can hear it howling, whatever." Not going there.
I think you can make assumptions on, the deeper pitched howls may have higher odds of being a male. The higher pitch may have higher odds, but I've killed coyotes that, I would have swore were males. I think most people that have killed many coyotes and heard them vocalize have mistaken the coyote. They've killed coyotes coming in that look like a big old male. You see it all the time on videos where they guess what they think the coyote is when they walk out there to check it, and they'll be wrong one way or the other. But the main thing that I'm getting at with the male and female howls and the young versus old and all that kind of stuff, coyotes respond to other coyote vocalizations because it's a strange coyote in their territory. They don't recognize, when you howl, they don't think that's their buddy. They don't think that's their long lost mate. You're never tricking them with that. And that's the mindset that a lot of people go into when they're creating a calling scenario. They're going out there and they're saying, you know, hey friends, I'm over here. Where are you? Let's go play, whatever. That's not really what's going on. What's happening is, whether you go out there and you howl with a male howl or you howl with a female howl, and it's old or young coyote, all you're doing is introducing a strange coyote that they do not recognize. They don't know if it's a male or a female, nor do they care if it's a male or female. Even if they did recognize it as a male or a female, they still react to it for the same reason. And that reason is, this is a strange coyote that we don't know. And that's what causes the reaction. When it's a known local coyote that they recognize the vocalizations of, then when those coyotes howl, they know which coyote it is that howls. I get to watch mine do it all the time, and I get to hear them react to wild coyotes. I can also mess with them with howls off of an e-call, howls that they do know versus howls that they don't know, and you can see the difference in reaction. And those reactions are the same when it's a howl that they don't know, you can play a female howl or a male howl, and that reaction to it being a strange howl is the same. When you play a sound, like if I record one of my coyotes and I play back a howl that they recognize, or like my voice, they recognize my howls and the way that they react to those versus the way that they react to a wild coyote that gets up here around them, the way that they react to that. You can tell the excitement difference and the level of aggression difference in, and that's why coyotes react to vocalizations. And when people are howling, they're really putting too much thought into, I've got to play this female howl, because if I play a male howl, this may intimidate and scare and all. That's not the way it works. They
Right.
don't. It's just like the Chihuahua that jumps on the pit bull. You know, animals do not size each other up the same way that humans do, and a lot of times humans put too much thought into. They'll put too much human thought into the pecking order and the structure and the territorial boundaries and all that stuff that animals like coyotes live by.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, um, getting back onto, I know there's a ton of questions here that we got to get caught up on, or at least
I'll
try
try
to.
to answer faster.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. I ask you a question and you don't shut up for 10 minutes talking about one time.
I try to be thorough, man.
Oh,
It's a
no,
bad.
dude. That's why we all love you so much, man. Um, Let me see. Yeah. Heck yeah. Thanks, Kyle, for that, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Um, Yeah, Travis, I do personally run MFK sounds. I bought one of the sound packs and I pretty much stick loyal to that for the most part when I'm out calling, and it's been working for me, but get a hold of me sometime and I'll tell you what I'm using. Um a lot of fans, you got a lot of support here, man. People are talking about how this young man, he wanted to know the difference between Fox Pro sounds and MFK, but we got him answered here. Dustin Parker did. So here's the one I was looking for. Not even sure what this is, so I'll let you answer it.
Ever going to do a throwback to the old TC cans? Uh, Probably not, just because I've actually got bags and bags of the TC stickers. For people that don't know the backstory, when I started this up in 2009, it was TC Custom Calls, and the slogan was "Made for Killing." And just to keep it short, I ended up dropping. I knew that the company would be more valuable without my initials and stuff like that attached to it. People were already referring to it on forums as MFK for short, and so the TC got dropped. We went with MFK, Made for Killing. The slogan became "Sound Better, Kill More," which a lot of the cans had that on them. And you know, as as things progress, the wolf logo and the MFK Made for Killing is kind of our current deal. I still throw the Sound Better, Kill More stuff in there, but man, I've probably got some TC custom. Matter of fact, I know I do. I've got some TC custom call can stickers. If you want one, got plenty of them.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
yellow and green.
No, just kind of referencing back real quick on that, when I was talking about trying to see about pulling you and Rick Pallet on here together. You guys will be able to. I mean, you're watching these coyotes as they're making these sounds, and that's different from us that just hit play on our remote and listen to them and try to imagine what's going on. So I just think that we'd all have a lot to learn from that. And I'm gonna reach out to old Rick Pallet and see if I can't set that up if you're truly cool with it.
Oh man, I'm good with it. Like I said, I've never talked to Rick personally. I don't know what Rick's feelings are towards me. He may tell you no way. And but it probably depends on how much he knows about me or doesn't, and all that kind of stuff. But it's like I told you before, I think at some point, outside of all the business stuff and that side of it. Well, I do this stuff because I love coyote hunting. I'm passionate about learning about them. I consider myself a woodsman above all else. And I think he got into this stuff based off what I do know, just what background I do know, which is not a lot. I think that I think Rick's doing the same thing I'm doing for the same reasons that I'm doing it. So at some point in time, I think we could probably, sit down and whether anybody knew it or not, and probably trade information back and forth, and both of us get a kick out of just some of the things we've seen and learned uh, over the years.
For sure. No, that's great. Travis, yeah, man, give me a shout tomorrow and I'll write down what I picked up from him. Maybe you can go ahead and get that bought. So Torry, somebody commented and said this is the longest. I'll put this up on the screen here.
I saw that a couple times.
Yeah, yeah, longest one I've ever watched. So we're at 1 hour and 40 minutes and we still got 80 people hanging with us. That's pretty impressive. So
Yeah,
people want to hear what you have to say. That's cool.
I appreciate everybody tuning in. I was going to tune in and talk to you regardless. I enjoy, trading information back and forth about the coyotes. And
No, we have a lot of fun.
I told you the first time we tried to do it was such a bad connection that I feel obligated to, share information about what I've learned with people that support MFK. And even if they don't support MFK, if they pick something up from it, and maybe at some point they will give us a try. So I appreciate everybody tuning in, and hope I said something worth listening to.
Yeah, for sure. So those of you that are out there and you have any questions about MFK or any questions specific to Torry, this dude is top notch. And if you reach out to him on his Facebook page, MFK, right? Just your Facebook page, MFK.
Yeah, Dave, my buddy Dave Stucks actually answers he kind of runs the MFK page for me most of the time. And, if people are reaching out to me directly, it's my personal page, which Torry Cook.
Yeah. And Torry will make sure that you get a good solid answer. And he's just a stand up guy. And it's been a great relationship that I've had with him over the last couple months or whatever. But been having a lot of fun talking to you, Torry. And I think everybody else does here. I'm getting a lot of useful information, and I will continue to watch and support both of you guys. That's awesome. So thanks to everybody that's tuned in and stayed with us. There's 77 at the time we're tuning out, which is pretty incredible. So thanks, guys. And we'll be seeing you soon, and maybe we'll come through with some of the things we talked about. And hopefully politics don't start spreading this all over the place, and or hopefully they do. Make it go viral, right? For all the right reasons.
That's right.
Peace out, guys.